Hello. I have to admit this is a little bit of an experiment as I have company. You're going to see him over my shoulder here and there, I'm sure. But basically, it's so silly. I just was excited about, the technology has gotten so much better. In the beginning, the green screen and the backgrounds and Zoom left a bit to be desired because whenever you moved forward and back, it would sort of consume you, and it was very disturbing. But I just set up a whole. I mean, everything is an experiment here. I now have a dual monitor situation, which I've had in the past when doing some online teaching, but it's been a while. So now I'm gearing up to do some more online mentoring. So I have my dual monitor thing set up. It's kind of a lot. It's a lot, a lot of space. So I'm experimenting with that, but I guess I'm most excited about the virtual background because that means I don't need to clean up the dirty laundry on the floor or clean up my studio. So this is again an experiment. But I do have something I've been wanting to talk about, and it's been a few days. I left an audio note on my phone, but I haven't quite gotten to this particular topic yet. And let's see if I can formulate it as clearly as I did in my note to myself. Basically, as some of you know, in promoting The Seeker, which was a labor of love, it was very inspired. It was very much a parable of not just the spiritual journey that we all share, but what I've been through the past 2 years, the trials and all they've taught me, which is immeasurable. So I was very excited to share it. It was very inspired. It came out of me in 2 weeks. And I've also said, Paul Coelho's The Alchemist poured out of him similarly in a matter of, I think he said 2 weeks. So I feel great about that it was a very fluid process and my intuition was in, high gear. There were, of course, revisions, many revisions, and I'm so much happier with it after having done them. It felt very direct, if that makes sense, and it felt very like a very expressive experience as far as the creative process goes. Anyway, all that said, of course, I'm finding the best way to promote it, and that includes my brand on Speaker Hub and podcast guests. So the truth is, I'm really playing around with my big TED talk, and I'm trying to figure out exactly what my brand is. And it's fascinating that because that begins to correlate with your purpose, your ministry, right? Your calling, all these things that the seeker is largely about. In the grand tradition of art imitating life, which is the best way, right, for synchronicity to propel things and manifest, it's always fascinating when it's kind of neck and neck. What you're trying to put out into the universe kind of creates a space in which you can grow and transform in real time. I'm fascinated by that, and I actually think that's probably the only way in which things manifest. I hope that makes sense. So anyway, I'm kind of feeling my way, finding my brand, or I guess fine tuning my brand in terms of what I have to offer in podcasts and as a keynote speaker in the circuit. So in doing that, what I've noticed is, I guess I've had a really good luck with podcasts. I tend to click with the host, especially if they've read my work or at least familiarize themselves with my career and have the right questions that kind of pull the story out of me. God knows I have a million stories to tell, and I think it is up to the podcast host to do the research, to familiarize themselves with the guest, and ask questions that actually create the story that is of interest to their listeners. I think there's everything's what you make it. So as a listener, there's going to be a grain of something of value to anybody, I would think. So I have faith in that, and I've had really good luck. I mean, most of my podcast guests, we just could talk until the cows come home, and we often do. We go over. But on the rare occasion, it just doesn't feel like the best fit, or they don't, I guess, quite know where to go with me, and I feel like I failed them in a way because, I mean, it's not that it's as grave as it sounds. I always feel good about them, but I do feel like maybe it's not on brand, if that makes sense, on brand for the particular podcast. And I guess that's what I want to talk about. When it doesn't feel quite right, it's for the following reason. So some of the themes, not the main theme per se, but some of the themes in The Seeker are not just the spiritual journey we share, but there are tenets of literally manifestation. I mean, life is manifestation. The creative process is manifestation by definition. So God knows, it's called, I really hate this term, but the New Age movement has largely been a revival of the mentalism that dates back to Hermes, right? The ancient Egyptians, but was sort of repopularized at the beginning of this century. The form it's now taken is this new age section of the bookstore, and I think that's really reductive actually, but it embraces ideas that you often hear. What the bleep was about, the quantum mechanics behind manifestation, arguably. The Secret was the most mainstream version of this mentalism that I'm talking about. So, to be specific, terms like the law of attraction, the power of positive thinking, these concepts of manifestation and how it actually operates on a mechanistic and empirical level, all those conversations really have to do with mentalism. And arguably, they're the nature of life. I don't want to say too much, but you know, universes were created the same way we're trying to manifest things in our lives. So anyway, surely some of that rings a bell. But I guess what I want to say is, and you're surely aware of this, I feel like those concepts have been hijacked in some ways by life coaches that want you to get that yacht and they want to help you manifest material abundance. And of course, that's natural. We all succumb to that a little bit. But the truth is, in my opinion, all the things that most spiritual traditions or spiritual wisdom traditions, sorry, I want to make sure I'm still recording, seek to provide, like most wisdom traditions and spiritual tenets, seek to limit the suffering that seems to come with life. Hopefully that rings a bell. Most of them seek to provide either enlightenment, which can seem daunting, right, and unattainable, or simple tranquility, contentment, inner peace, well-being, satisfaction. Hope that rings a bell. Which all of those things could be put under the category of limiting the suffering in life. So in helping individuals on that path of finding those elusive things, they end up being ends in themselves. So I guess another way of putting it is when people really distill down to the bare bones what they truly desire in life, it's what the yacht will bring them. It's what the material possessions and the abundance that they're looking for will bring them. And those intrinsic qualities, which I just listed, really are independent of the circumstances and conditions or the things on the material plane. I mean, the simple way of putting it is money doesn't buy happiness. We've all heard that. Well, I've gone into a little more detail on that front. So anyway, what I'm encountering in the podcast circuit, when I feel it's not a great fit, it's because there is that materialist slant or that consumerist slant that they're expecting from my brand. I'm not promising anything. I'm talking about in the seeker, actually. It's much more comfortable for me to speak about these concepts in the narrative realm, where there's still artistic, hopefully, artistic integrity, literary value, and an emotional basis to the stories I'm telling. And then rather than being an agenda or something didactic or moralistic that I'm spoon feeding, if that makes sense, the themes show the good, the bad, and the ugly, and all sides of certain coins. Okay, so I have some technical difficulties. I'm realizing this background really is carving into me, which the brim of my cap keeps disappearing. Anyway, so I had to restart here. I think I was basically saying that in the podcast circuit and the speaker hub circuit, I'm finding that when it's not a great fit, it's not that they expect me to talk about my yacht or my Learjet or my mansion, but I feel like the very fact that I don't have all the answers, and I've long resisted saying anything definitive because anything definitive can be, right, disproven by the Socratic method. So it's just not the way I roll in life. And yet, lately, coming out of the circumstances and conditions that prevented me, like all of us, from getting my desires at a certain point, we all struggle with issues of scarcity and lack and even self-love. So that's been my journey. And in coming out of it and using the tools of manifestation by deliberately creating instead of creating by default, I've actually learned to have conviction again. I think the black and white thinking that comes with youth, which often yields to more convergent thinking, it's a natural progression we all go through. But, too many times I said, well, you think you have all the answers in youth, and then life kicks your ass, is the way I would put it, meaning disillusionments and disappointments get in, and loss and mourning and all of that somehow gets in, and you kind of lose your alchemy. So I like the idea. I took pride in the surrender. I took pride in the fact that I didn't have any answers, but it got me in trouble. So I'm actually trying to get more comfortable, not necessarily having the answers, but having a sense of conviction about what I have learned about life. Even if it's just a hunch, even if there's a million different ways of seeing things via perspective, right, or semantics, which that is my problem in life. I can see things from all different angles, and I do think everything that seems divisive is a matter of semantics and perspective. So all of that has just gotten me in trouble. So I'm actually trying to have more conviction and not be a black and white thinker per se, but dig my heels in about those things I do truly believe about the universe and life. So all that said, I will never be the guy that's going to promise you a yacht or promise you the abundance as a result of learning the tools of manifestation. I believe 100% that it's an inside job. Contentment is an inside job, despite the circumstances and conditions, and it is a huge theme in The Seeker. But abundance of the heart, richness of the heart, all of those things are the reward. So I feel like I'm not quite there yet. I'm very happy with, having turned certain things around, and I'm happy with the momentum, and I love any evidence of, name it, I call it divinity as a code word in The Seeker, but Celestia. I love any evidence of any glimpse of how the universe truly works. And so I thrive on it. Creativity is my religion. That's my alchemy in the world. When I have days just fueled by synchronicity and I see the dots that connect and I feel our interconnectivity, that is the richness in life for me. So I just may never have that yet. I've said many times, I've been to hell and back with my health issues of the past 2 years. I've learned, I thought my journey for a while was can't ignore the empirical, can't ignore the mechanistic. I was holistic about health, and yet I wasn't getting any better. And so at some point I thought, oh, the universe is trying to tell me, acknowledge the mechanistic. And I've done that. But in the end, because COVID really stalled my recovery, I wasn't getting the care I needed. It ended up being back in my court. The power to reclaim my health, which is just symbolic of reclaiming my agency in the world, reclaiming my self love and my intrinsic worth. All of those things were in my court. It was an inside job. So I may never have the yacht as evidence of the abundance. So I may never be the right fit for a Tony Robbins or any of those life coaches, do you know what I mean, that are sort of gearing their content toward that crowd. But I want everybody to consider that I may have missed something there. I was trying to say, in many venues, I've said I wouldn't trade for the world the emotional maturity and spiritual evolution and transformation of the past 2 years. I wouldn't wish our very, very faulty healthcare system on anyone. That is hell. But what I've learned and am trying to share with the world is immeasurable, if that makes sense. So anyway, do with that what you will, but I'm still struggling to find my brand, and that is, we do all share the idea of finding our purpose and contributing it back into the collective. And I guess that's the general level on which some of this might land. Okay, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the background. I don't know if I'm going to keep this up or not. I might find a background that is not so hungry and so eager to eat me. Okay, take care. Bye.